We welcome to the show Steve McNerney of The Pleasers. How's it going?
Good, Chris. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So, what can you tell us about your latest single and project?
Uh, Really, over the years, Bo and myself have talked about doing just writing a song, and he'd come up for a day in the studio, and then we wouldn't see each other again for a year or whatever. So losing Nick and Dave, the other two members of the Pleasers, was really shocked us both. They were quite close timings to each other as well. And we thought, well, if we're going to do it, we better do it. And so Bo started coming and staying at mine for a week or 2 weeks at a time. And we just got stuck in, made sure we were writing brand new stuff. Nothing that had been around, either of us had had. That was one of the rules. It had to be fresh and new. And that was a challenge, really. And that's really how it started. I can't even remember what the first song we started. And then we thought, well, why don't we do an album?
And how long has it been since you've done an album?
Well, for me, the last album I did was I had a band called Changing Man. It was about '97. I'd done an album, and then I split the band up because somebody borrowed the name. Who shall go nameless? And then I was working in Los Angeles for about 10 years, 6 months of the year, writing and producing other artists. So no, it's been a long time since we've. I don't know how long it is for Bo. I don't think he's done an album since the Pleasers. So yeah, it's a long time.
And with this latest single, is there a message behind the song?
Uh, I started the song after my father died. But just when you get one of those moments, sometimes it can be a smell, and it brings you back to your childhood, and you can't pin it down, but it's just for a second. So it's really nothing too heavy. It was just about that, really. And I had the verse and the bridge, which I thought was the chorus. And then when I played it to Bo, he turned up one day with what he thought was the middle eight. And as soon as he sang it, I said, "That's the bloody chorus. You've hijacked my chorus." Yeah, so, and it's one of the only times I didn't put the idea down on a dictaphone. I just kept it in my head for months, running it round. And yeah, I'm really happy with it. We both are.
Great. And what is the story of The Pleasers? How did it all happen from the beginning?
Oh, I left school and got a job at HMV Oxford Street in the order room. And I answered an ad in Melody Maker for a lead guitarist with vocals for a Beatles Wings type band. And that was Bo. And he was working at Boozy and Hawks or Cavendish Organs, or just off Oxford Street. So I got the job, and it was all Bo's stuff. I'd never really written anything. I was pretty rubbish guitarist as well at the time. It was him and another guy, and it was very contemporary stuff for the time. This was about 75, 76. And then somehow, in lunch times, I used to go around all the publishers and record companies trying, playing the cassette. Got nowhere. And then we got a session with Chappell's, and then one of the songs we recorded, the bass player and drummer at the time didn't even want to play on it, was "You Know What I'm Thinking Girl," which became the first Pleaser single. And it sounded completely against the grain. It sounded 60s. And one day I took it into Carlin Music. A guy named Dave Watson played him 6 or whatever it was of Bo's stuff. And then this one came on, "You Know What I'm Thinking Girl." And he said, I'll never forget it. I was only 17. He said, who wrote that? And I said, "Oh, we did." Because Bo did co-write it with me. And he said, "Have you got any more?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, how many? I said, about 20, which was bull. And he said, if you promise not to play that song to anybody, I'll give you a worldwide recording and publishing deal. So, I mean, I rang Bo in front of this guy and my girlfriend. Said, well, we got a record deal. And then we had to write some more songs in that vein, which I found quite easy, you know. But Bo was playing keyboard, so he had to learn to play bass because he could see the writing on the wall. And with the advance, we bought a PA amp and 4 suits. Found Dave, the drummer, and eventually Nick. Had a record out on Solid Gold Records, which was really well received. That was recorded at number 2 Abbey Road with Ron Richards producing, who produced the Hollies and also the Beatles, actually. We didn't know that at the time. And then we got managers, and then they got us out of that deal, and we got a deal with Arista Records. And we worked with a guy called Jeff Haslam. We did an EP at Decca. And then eventually Tommy Boyce, you know, of the Monkees fame, Voice and Heart. And we did 5 singles and an album. So that's basically how it started. But again, it was punk happened after we'd had the first record out. So we found ourselves against the grain again, you know.
Mm. Yeah,
Against the
interesting
groove.
period in music, wasn't it?
It really was, because the charts were still dominated by Queen and ELO, and this punk thing was happening. Plus, we were happening, and we were nothing to do with the punk thing really, but somehow we got swept along with it all, you know.
Mm. And I imagine getting the record deal, that must have been a really big high.
Oh, it was incredible, you know. It's what, especially those days, it was like the record companies and the publishers, they had whole buildings, you know,
Mm.
a studio all in the West End, which I don't think any of them have anymore, you know. So
Yeah.
it was a big thing to get a deal, as it was to get on TV, because there were only 3 stations, I think, you know.
So you'd meet somebody in an office and play them the tape? Would it be like that?
Yeah, I used to go to the reception, and they'd I'd not noticed the receptionist would go. I'd say I'd have a name. I'd get a name off one of the reps that would come to HMV, find out who was in A&R, and I'd just walk in and say, I've come to see whoever it was, and they'd say, "Oh, are you so and so? 3 o'clock," or whatever, and I'd go, "Yeah," and then get in the meeting and say, "Sorry, I'm not that guy, but will you have a listen?" So I got thrown out of a lot of places, but yeah, that's what you did in those days. Literally, they'd listen for 2 seconds. In fact, there was a publisher I remember in Regent Street, quite a big publisher, and they had booths like the record shops, and the guy would go in the booth and put your tape on, standing up, and then turn it off and give it back and go, "No, sorry, mate." You know, it was pretty harsh.
Pretty brutal, yeah, after a couple
It
of
was,
seconds.
yeah, it was. But that's how it was, you know, in them
Yeah.
days.
And with this album, the new album, what can you tell us about it? How many songs are on it, and what kind of material is on there?
There's 9 songs. Um, they're all different, but they're all basically the same, you know, harmonies. I like to think they're all great songs, you know, because we spent a lot of time in this room just with acoustics before we attempted to record whatever song it was. And all those years in Los Angeles, I'd learned so much about trimming songs from working with other top writers, you know. So you know, I learned to be brutal with the arrangements, and but that, you know, that's how it works. Really, you have to be.
Do you find less is more sometimes?
Oh, totally, yeah. Um, but we all fell in that hole at one point. You know, you can't polish what's her name. You know what I mean? And when you got 64 tracks, that was bad enough, or 24. And now with Logic and stuff, you've got endless amount of tracks. So it's very easy to try and make something that isn't good better than it really is. But you just can't, if you can play a song, anyway, for me, on an acoustic guitar from beginning to end, and it all makes sense and it's not too long and everything happens in the right place, then you know you've got a good foundation. Not everyone works like that, obviously. The
Hmm.
Stones, you know, they're still doing what they always did, kind of make it up as you go along, and it works. It works for them. So it's not everyone's thing, but it's what I'm into really, and Bo's into. So
Yeah, I mean, it must be a dramatic change from when you first recorded to now, isn't it? Totally different.
oh yeah, well, I mean, we had complete control. No, we were never happy with any of the producers. It never really sounded like we thought we sounded, you know. Um, so this we had complete control. No engineer, no producer, um, just the two of us, you know. So when sparks did fly, we could sort it out, you know, between us. It's funny, Bo said the other day, oh, wouldn't it be great to do another album with an engineer and a good studio? And I said, you know what? I said, that was the last thing I'd want to do. Because if I disagreed with you about something, there'd be a third person that might agree with me or agree with you. And that's where the problems kind of
He's a
start.
crowd.
Yeah, it is, unless you've got somebody, you know, really that that you know that well, that you trust. Like the Beatles had, really. They kind of never changed the formula, you know, engineers and producer and studio most of the time.
Hmm.
So yeah, so yeah, I enjoyed that part of the process, you know.
And who are some of your favorite musicians and bands and singers yourself?
Oh, well, obviously the Beatles and I mean the early Who stuff. I like Tom Petty, the later stuff of Tom Petty. Um, I don't listen to that much now, really. If I do, I listen to Stan Getz or Miles Davis or something, you know. Martin Knopfler's great, but I kind of feel, maybe it's arrogant, but I always feel like if there's something good enough out there that I'd like, it will find me, you know, rather than me going to find it. Because there's so many radio stations, as you know now, and you know the music press was like the record companies. They could make or break you, and I don't think that exists anymore. You know, they don't have that power anymore. So in some ways, it's a better thing because kids can make music in their bedrooms now and get it heard, whereas you couldn't do that. You had to have a record company. You had to go into a studio. Um, so, you know, the downside is unless you're playing live, there's the money's gone out of you know releasing stuff really.
Yeah,
Um,
because a lot of artists, it's all about the gigs, isn't it? They don't particularly make a lot of
yeah,
money from Spotify and things like that.
no, and it's funny really because it was the exact opposite. You know, back then, no one made money live because it cost you know to have a light show and a crew and everything and the hotels.
Hmm.
Very rarely you'd earn a lot, but you wouldn't make I mean, the Who, look how much money they used to lose on the road. And you made your money from the records and the publishing. And now it's gone completely the other way around. It's like the record company contracts now, they take your gig money as well, you know, your live money,
Oh, wow.
which they never did back in the day.
Hmm.
That
Yeah.
was a complete different thing, you know.
A lot of change then.
Oh, completely, completely. And I'm glad we got in when we did, when there was still vinyl and it was old school, but you really felt you'd achieved something, you know, when you go in a record shop and see a record there. It was a buzz. Whereas now, I mean, we've got a limited we pressed up some CDs just because I didn't feel like it was out, you know. If it's on Spotify, if you've got nothing to hold and to read, um, but even that's, you know, it's tiny now, isn't it, compared to 12-inch album. And
Yeah,
that was part of the thing, wasn't it, when you opened the album and you read all the stuff. Um, that's all gone, and the actual possession of it. So I mean, maybe that's why vinyl's coming back. Kids you know, I bought a deck last year and dug out all my old albums, and it's like a ritual, you know, picking an album and then taking it out, cleaning it and putting it on, putting the needle on. It's a complete different thing to CD or. I mean, I don't download any music, and I don't listen on my phone or anything, you know. So yeah, it's a mad world, isn't it? The amount of people I've spoken to and said, "Oh, you know, do you want a CD?" And oh, I haven't got a CD player. You know? It's incredible. Um, and you know, a lot of people say, "Oh, there might be one in the car," but it's like they've never used them, you know.
but it's funny because now it seems that people are more likely to have a record player than a CD player.
Incredible, isn't it? Yeah,
Mm.
and cassettes. I can't believe how many album people are putting albums out on cassette. Because I suppose it is tape, isn't it?
Mm.
It's analog. Um, I'm not a fan of CDs. I mean, they were kind of exotic when they came out, but you know, once the first jewel cage breaks on you, and and the CD starts spluttering,
That's it.
uh, yeah, you think, well. And also, I mean, I dug out all my old singles, and when you hear like "She Loves You" on vinyl in mono on a record player, it completely sounds completely different. It brings you back to what it sounded like in 1963, how different it was and instant. So yeah, I mean, people can say it's nostalgia, but it's a physical thing. I think it's you know, putting the record away, and you know, the amount of people used to have CDs lying everywhere, didn't they? You know, not in their cases, and no one read them because you couldn't read the writing. They were so bloody small. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean you have to look after records as well, don't you?
that's what I mean. And it was important. I mean, you didn't buy an album every day. You couldn't do that. You know, if you could buy one once a week, that was a big layout, really, and a big deal. But you got excited, you know, about what am I going to buy? You know,
And of
what's
course, you could skip it, but you probably wouldn't, would you? You'd listen to the whole thing, wouldn't you?
no, and that's I think what killed a lot of that was the greatest hits trend. You know, when they started cherry picking tracks off bands' albums, and they're all out of context, and you know, and you'd say to somebody, "Well, no, you should hear that whole album because it's brilliant," you know.
Mm.
Yeah. So a lot of that, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but to me, a lot of that's missing. I think a lot of the kids don't know who produced it, who wrote it, who's playing on it. Whereas I always wanted to know that stuff. You know, you read the album and see who wrote what, who's. I mean, the Beatles, I think on Help, they even listed who was playing what on each track, you know. And it was all, you felt like you had an insight, you know.
And what was it like in Los Angeles? You mentioned you worked there.
Oh, that was a complete eye opener because I hadn't written with anyone since Bo. So I got another publishing deal with my band Changing Man. And then when I split those up, I still had the publishing deal. So I'd send my publisher just the odd thing I was doing. I was plumbing at the time, actually, to pay the mortgage. And I'd do something at the weekend and I'd send it to him. And I was on holiday and the publisher just opened an office in Los Angeles and he called me and he said, I've been playing your stuff to people out here and they really like it. Would you like to come out and do some co-writes? So I said, yeah, of course. And but what about the mortgage? And they worked something out, which was really good for me to just go out for 3 months and see what it was like. Uh, I didn't know what to expect. I thought I'd have to have songs ready, and it really isn't like that. I work with sometimes two people a day. Writers or artists or producers, and it's quite mad because you write a song and you demo it. Sometimes you get to produce it, the final thing, but most times they just take this demo and work with their producer, and you'd never play the song again, you know. And there were hundreds of songs, literally. I couldn't tell you what key they were in, what the chords were, because when you're doing your own stuff or with a band, you obviously play most of it live, so that sticks with you forever. But yeah, did some great stuff, lots of different genres. Worked with lots of the R&B crowd, which I know nothing about, but I'd come up with just chord things and let them do their thing on it, and it would be a co-write. So did a lot of film and TV. Very competitive out there, though. I couldn't get. No one's afraid of selling themselves, and that's really in your face. It's not really English thing, is it? When you're young, you can get away with it, but these people, they smell when someone's in town doing a new album. All these songwriters come out of the woodwork. They know where they're recording, and they just turn up. These people, they're just unashamed like that, Well, they're hardworking, but yeah. So it was a real experience, and it was good. I had a lot of success out there. Worked with, Bruno Mars. I worked with. I only knew him as Bruno. He was signed to Tamla Motown at the time. And then years later, I'd heard this name, Bruno Mars, and I was watching the Graham Norton show, and I saw this guy, Bruno Mars, and I thought, God, that guy reminds me of somebody. I thought, oh, is it Michael Jackson? And next morning, I woke up and I went, oh, blimey, it's Bruno, Yeah, so it was a lot of diverse stuff I would never have got involved with. Yeah, it was a real eye opener, and but I think even those days are a bit gone now. That most of the artists want to write their own stuff now, and they keep the same little crew. There was a saying that used to be used a lot out there, which was come up with the word, get a third. So you'd be sitting in a room with an artist, two writers, and you'd really have the song nailed before you got there. And you'd have to go through this pretense, and go, oh, I wonder what, we need a line there, and you just let them go, oh, what about it? And then that's it. They've got their third. You've got more of a chance of them using the song,
Hmm. Oh, that's interesting. And with the Pleasers, what do you think is the best song you recorded with the Pleasers?
Well, that's a good question. I've always liked a song called Change My Mind because it was one of the last things we recorded at Olympic, and Tommy Boyce kind of left us to it ourselves, He didn't change the arrangement, but he cut out the middle eight of the final thing, which soon afterwards I realised was the right thing, but because I'd written the song, I didn't take well to that. But now I realise he was right. But he let us have a free hand, and it sounds like we always thought we sounded or should sound, So yeah, would be that one for me, I think.
Great. And the new album, is it out now?
It's out this Friday, the 9th.
Great. And what's the name
Yeah,
of it?
it's called 1 Second in Time.
1 Second in Time. Great.
Yeah, you haven't got a copy, no?
I've been sent a link, so I've got
Oh,
the single, I think. So I'll be playing that on the show, and the
brilliant.
song you just mentioned. Thanks a lot for joining us. It's been great speaking to you, Steve.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
No problem.